Every empire believes it's different, that it's stronger, smarter, immune to the rules of history, but every empire collapses the same way, not through invasion, not through rebellion, but through its own money. Currency collapse has ended every dominant empire in human history. Rome, Spain, Britain, all fell the same way. Each believed they were special. Each ignored the warnings. And now, the United States is walking the exact same path. Step by step. The same overconfidence, the same debt, the same decay from within. This is the pattern that has repeated for over 2,000 years. The pattern that turns the world's most powerful nations into footnotes in history. And the question isn't if it will happen again. It's how close we are to the end of the story. Because the pattern is already repeating. And once it begins, it never stops. Let's go back to where it all started, with the empire that defined civilization itself. Rome. Rome wasn't just an empire, it was the empire. At its peak, it ruled 60 million people across 3 continents. Its roads stretched for thousands of miles. Its armies were unmatched. Its cities glittered with marble. And at the heart of it all was trust. Trust in a silver coin called the denarius. For centuries, every Roman soldier, merchant, and citizen believed that coin had real value. It was pure silver, and everyone knew exactly what it was worth. That trust was the foundation of Rome's power. But empires are expensive. Every new border meant more troops, more forts, more roads, more taxes, and more money than Rome actually had. Then came Emperor Nero. He needed more coins to fund his lavish life and endless wars. So he made a small change. He cut the silver content from 100% to 90%. It seemed harmless, but that tiny change started the slow death of the Roman currency. By the time Emperor Caracalla took power, the coin was only half silver. And a few decades later, under Emperor Gallienus, it was barely 5%. A coin that once held real value was now almost worthless metal with a thin silver coating. Prices exploded. A loaf of bread that cost 1 coin now cost 50. Soldiers demanded payment in gold or goods. Farmers refused to sell food for coins. Trade collapsed. Trust disappeared. And Rome's greatest enemy turned out to be Rome itself. Not the barbarians at the gate, but the greed within its own walls. By the time the money died, the empire was already dead. It couldn't pay its armies. It couldn't run its cities. It couldn't feed its people. Rome proved the pattern. Military overreach, unsustainable spending, currency debasement, inflation, collapse. And the terrifying part is, every empire since has repeated the same mistake. The next one to do it was drowning in silver, not running out of it. Spain. In the 1500s, Spain stood on top of the world. It had conquered vast territories across the Americas. It ruled lands so rich that people called it the empire where the sun never set. And in 1545, Spain made a discovery that seemed to guarantee its dominance forever. A mountain made entirely of silver. Cerro Rico, in what is now Bolivia, became the single richest mine in human history. For more than a century, it poured out nearly half of all the silver on Earth. Galleons loaded with treasure crossed the Atlantic every year, filling Spain's coffers with unimaginable wealth. The Spanish dollar became the world's first truly global currency. Pure, trusted, accepted from Europe to Asia. It looked like Spain had found infinite money. But that illusion would destroy them, because when everyone suddenly has more money, the money itself becomes worth less. Prices soared. Inflation exploded across Europe. What cost 1 silver coin in 1500 cost 10 a century later. Silver was still pure, but there was too much of it. Spain had flooded the market with its own success. And worse, it didn't build industries or invent new technologies, it just kept spending. Wars, palaces, imports from other countries that were actually producing things. The silver came in and flowed straight back out. By the late 1500s, Spain's kings were drowning in debt. King Philip II borrowed endlessly to fund wars he couldn't win. Against the Ottomans, against the Netherlands, against England, and when he couldn't pay, he did the unthinkable. He defaulted, not once, but 4 times in 40 years. The richest empire in the world went bankrupt over and over again. Each default destroyed confidence. Lenders stopped trusting Spain. Interest rates soared. The government began minting coins with less silver. And just like Rome, the currency became a lie. By the 1600s, Spain's power was fading fast. Its economy hollowed out, its armies unpaid, its colonies slipping away. The empire built on silver ended not in battle, but in bankruptcy. Too much money, too little wisdom. Spain proved the pattern again. Wealth, overspending, inflation, collapse. The next empire thought it had learned from history, but it made the same mistake, this time with gold. Britain. For over 2 centuries, Britain ruled the world. Its empire stretched across every continent. 1/4 of the world's population lived under its flag. The British pound wasn't just money, it was the backbone of global trade. Everyone trusted it, because every pound could be exchanged for a fixed amount of gold. That gold standard made the currency unshakable. But empires are built on credit, and credit has to be repaid. Britain borrowed to build railways, to run colonies, to fund wars, and for a while it worked, until war changed everything. In 1914, World War I began. Britain's national debt was about $650 million. By the end of the war, it had exploded to over $7 billion. A tenfold increase in just 5 years. To pay for the war, Britain printed money and suspended the gold standard. The pound was no longer backed by gold, only by government promises. After the war, they tried to go back. In 1925, Winston Churchill restored the gold standard at the old exchange rate, but the value was too high. Exports collapsed. Unemployment soared. And 6 years later, Britain was forced off gold again, this time for good. Trust began to crumble. Then came World War II. By 1945, Britain's national debt had reached 270% of its entire economy. The empire had bankrupted itself to survive. And at the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944, the unthinkable happened. The world replaced the British pound with the US dollar as the global reserve currency. Britain's financial crown was gone. They tried to recover. In 1949, the pound was devalued by 30%. In 1967, it was devalued again. Each time, savings vanished and confidence evaporated. The empire that had ruled the world could no longer afford to hold it together. India declared independence. The Suez Crisis humiliated Britain. Colony after colony broke away. And by the 1970s, inflation was soaring. Britain went to the International Monetary Fund for a bailout, the same institution it once helped create. The pound, once the world's strongest currency, had become a symbol of decline. The pattern had repeated again. War debt, currency debasement, inflation, collapse. Rome had done it with silver, Spain with too much treasure, Britain with borrowed money. And when the pound fell, a new empire rose to take its place. The United States. After World War II, the United States stood alone at the top. Its cities were intact. Its industries were booming. Its currency was king. At the Bretton Woods Conference, the world made it official. The US dollar became the global standard, backed by gold at $35 an ounce. Every major nation tied its currency to the dollar. And for decades, that system worked. America became the new Rome, powerful, trusted, unstoppable. But the same pattern was already taking shape. Wars in Korea and Vietnam drained money. New welfare programs and global military bases stretched the budget thin. By the late 1960s, foreign governments noticed something strange. The United States was printing more dollars than it had gold to back them. France and others began demanding gold instead of paper, and the vaults at Fort Knox started to empty. In 1971, President Nixon made a decision that changed history. He ended the gold standard completely. From that moment on, the dollar was backed by nothing but trust. The dollar had become pure fiat money, just ink and belief. At first, it looked fine. The petrodollar system kept global demand high because oil could only be traded in dollars, but underneath, the same sickness grew: debt. In 1980, America owed $900 billion. By 2000, it was $5.6 trillion. By 2020, it had jumped to $27 trillion. And now, in 2025, it's over $36 trillion. That's a 40-fold increase in less than 50 years. To keep the system alive, the Federal Reserve created money out of nothing. In 2008, it began quantitative easing, pumping trillions into the economy. During the pandemic, it printed $4 trillion more in just 2 years. They said it wouldn't cause inflation. They said modern economics was different, but inflation exploded anyway. Prices for food, housing, and healthcare soared. And while politicians blamed everything else, history whispered the truth. Rome said the same thing before its collapse. Spain said the same thing before its defaults. Britain said the same thing before losing its empire. Every empire believes it's immune until the pattern catches up. And right now, America is following that pattern step by step. The world's trust in the dollar is fading. Nations are trading in local currencies. Gold reserves are rising in China and Russia. Global reserves held in dollars have dropped from 70% to 58%. The signs are everywhere. The debt is unsustainable. The money is losing meaning. And the pattern, the same one that ended every empire before, is unfolding again. The only question left is how much time remains before the next stage begins. Stage 5. Every empire that has collapsed economically has followed the same script. Different names, different rulers, same story. The pattern doesn't just rhyme, it repeats, step by step. Stage 1. Dominance. The empire rises to unmatched power. Its currency is trusted. Its economy is unstoppable. Stage 2. Overextension. The empire spreads too far, too fast. Too many colonies, too many promises, too many wars. Stage 3. Deficit spending. It starts borrowing more than it earns. At first, it seems manageable. Then it becomes permanent. Stage 4. Currency debasement. The empire can't borrow or tax enough, so it creates more money. Rome reduced silver in the denarius. Spain flooded the world with silver. Britain abandoned gold. America prints dollars from nothing. Stage 5. Inflation. Prices rise. Wages stagnate. Everyday life becomes harder. People feel it before they understand it. Stage 6. Loss of confidence. The people stop trusting the money. The world stops trusting the empire. Stage 7. Collapse. The economy cracks. The military weakens. The empire fades into history. That's the pattern. 7 stages, 4 empires, 2,000 years of repetition. And right now, the United States is standing at stage 5. Inflation isn't just a statistic, it's a symptom. Confidence in the dollar is already slipping. Foreign banks are quietly moving away from it. New alliances are forming. New systems are emerging. And once the world loses faith in the dollar, the final 2 stages begin quickly. Stage 6 is the breaking point. Stage 7 is irreversible. That's when history stops whispering and starts shouting. Every time this pattern has appeared, the outcome has been the same. Because the math never changes. You can't spend more than you earn forever. You can't print wealth out of thin air. And you can't destroy trust without destroying the empire that depends on it. The United States isn't the first to face this moment, but it might be the last to pretend it's different. Because when the pattern reaches its final stage, there's no turning back. The only question left is what comes after. History always gives us clues about what happens after the fall. Once an empire reaches stage 6, the path ahead splits into 3 directions. The first is a controlled decline. Britain followed this path after World War II. It lost its empire, its global currency, and its dominance, but it didn't vanish. It accepted its new place, adjusted, and slowly rebuilt. The second path is total collapse. That was Rome. Its money became worthless, its government crumbled, its armies turned against it, and Europe descended into centuries of chaos. This is the darkest version, the moment when trust, order, and leadership all disappear at once. The third path is a reset and restructure. When the system fails, a new one rises. Sometimes it's a new currency backed by gold. Sometimes it's a coalition of nations creating a new reserve. Sometimes it's digital, fast, global, and controlled. Painful, yes, but survivable. The question is which path the United States will choose. Because right now, none of the numbers add up. The national debt can't be repaid, inflation can't be ignored, and the political will to change course doesn't exist. Default would destroy the dollar instantly. More inflation means slow collapse, and restructuring would take unity, something America doesn't have anymore. What makes this moment different is scale. Rome fell and Europe suffered. Spain collapsed and Europe adjusted. Britain fell and the world moved on. But the dollar isn't regional, it's global. Every central bank, every trade deal, every market depends on it. If it falls, the ripple will be felt everywhere. From Wall Street to small villages, from billionaires to farmers, from today's empires to tomorrow's survivors. The pattern says it's close. The debt says it's close. The money printing says it's close. History has watched this sequence unfold 4 times before, and it's never been wrong. You can deny it, you can delay it, but you can't escape it. Because the math of empire never lies. Rome believed it was invincible. Spain believed its silver would last forever. Britain believed it could borrow without consequence. And America believes it's different. It's not. The pattern doesn't care about belief, it only cares about reality. And reality is closing in. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe. Because when the pattern completes, you'll want to understand what happened and why. History has the answers, and the pattern never lies. Every empire begins with strength and ends with denial. They all start the same way, united, ambitious, unstoppable, and they all end the same way, divided, indebted, and blind to the truth staring them in the face. Rome fell when its silver turned to dust. Spain fell when its mountains of treasure became worthless. Britain fell when its credit ran out and its colonies walked away. And now, America stands on that same cliff. 36 trillion in debt, hundreds of military bases across the world, a currency backed only by promises, and a generation pretending the rules of history no longer apply. But history doesn't care about promises or pride. It only cares about patterns. Every time the same signs appear, overextension, debt, inflation, loss of confidence, the ending never changes. It doesn't matter how powerful the empire is or how advanced its technology becomes. You can't print trust. You can't borrow forever. And you can't escape the math of collapse. The pattern has destroyed every empire before this one, and it's already written how this one ends. Maybe it happens slowly, a quiet decline where the dollar fades and the world moves on. Maybe it happens fast, a sudden collapse that shocks the global system overnight. Either way, the result is the same. A new order will rise. A new reserve currency will emerge. And history will turn another page. Because the empire collapse pattern has no favorites. It doesn't care about flags or borders. It only follows numbers, the same sequence, the same outcome, every time. So if you're watching this, remember, empires don't die in battle, they die in debt. And when the currency falls, the empire follows. That's not prophecy, that's pattern, and the pattern never lies.